So, brothers, was good. We're back again for another live today.
What up?
You know, hope everybody enjoyed their weekends, man. I enjoyed my weekend coming off the B-Day, so was able to spend some time with the wife and the family. Hopefully, everybody did it. So, we back at it again. How y'all feeling?
Good. Happy birthday to you.
Man, it's been cool, man. Just been doing a whole bunch of daddy-daughter time. The wife and the son is out of town, so we've been doing our thing, man. It's cool having a adult kid. You can just kick it a little bit different.
You kick it a little different, man. I think that's perfect because that segues right into the topic that we're going to talk about today. Not to mention that we all have some experience with fathers, right? We had to have fathers to bring us into this world, so we've all had experience with men. This is going to be a bit of a controversial topic, but as everyone knows, we all have different perspectives as Black men on this topic. But we're going to talk about fatherhood today. And, one of the things that kind of made me always want to talk about this, I think that the other day we had a conversation on our Marco Polo. And, we started to talk about, with Devin, we started to talk about our relationship with our father. Shout out to Devin Jeter. We started to talk about our relationship with our fathers. And a couple of weeks ago, I said I watched. Me and my wife sat down and watched a Red Table with Jada and Will. Not the not the entanglement one. Not the entanglement.
Talking about the bullshit.
Nah, not about that one. But it was basically talking about fatherhood in general, and it brought up a lot of interesting discussion. So as brothers, as we always do, we see things that's going on in the world, going on around us, and things in our family, and we bring it to the table and we talk about it. So what we're doing today is just allowing people to be involved in those conversations. So why do you guys think that fathers get such a bad rap out here?
I'll keep it simple. I think it's a lot to do with media and the narrative that's given to all fathers, but especially African American or Black fathers. I think the narrative that's out there is that they're not around, they don't attend, they're not supportive, they're not engaged. Like, it's the various things that are said about African American fathers, and I think it's just the narrative that's put out there by the media that, for the most part, continues just to pull away from the family as well as the male role model in the family overall.
Yeah, I think it's a little it's that, of course, that ties into the whole stereotype about Black men in general, like Paris was talking about. But also, I think the Black mother and grandmothers have been head of the households for a long time. But that's just the kind of how things have worked in regards to a number of things with the Black culture, is that our men are out of the house. So women have been the head of the household for a long time. So that kind of plays a role into how the male or men or uncles and dads are portrayed in the families, because it's always women around, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I agree with y'all on that one too. It's just when you think about just the whole totality of how the father and mother relationship plays, it's a lot of blended families out here these days, and a lot of women that have been playing that role of mommy and daddy, for a significant amount of children's lives. So sometimes it also just plays out due to the fact that, if you've been playing mommy and daddy for so long, sometimes it's hard to figure out how to just play mommy. It's not necessarily their fault. I mean, it's a survival instinct. So I don't fault any of the women out there that's had to do that at some period of time in their life. It's just, it's an adjustment when you have that extra help and how, you receive it and how you guys get on the same page with your co-parenting.
I think that's true, because there's a lot of factors sometimes that are not really studied or, looked deep enough into about, the whole parent relationship and kind of typically what happens. I think traditionally, culturally, we've always had mothers stay at home and take care of the children. And sometimes even in our community, mothers stay home, take care of the children, work, take care of the children, do everything. And so I think a lot of times, whether some men subscribe to just being kind of the breadwinners, or, you kind of have those men who are just absent in their lives. I think that accumulation of different factors and variables kind of contribute to the negative narrative that we have out there about fathers, and even more so Black fathers. I think that, one of the problems that I've always had is there's this narrative of absent Black fathers. And, we guys, we have a very large friend group, right? Not only do we have a large friend group, our fraternity, that number in itself balloons and gives us, connections to thousands and thousands of Black men. And I don't know a single just deadbeat dad, right? I don't know one,
right?
Right?
Yeah.
You know,
At least not in our group of friends, for sure.
That's a violation, bro. That's a violation.
I mean, if you just talk about our friendship in general, I'll catch a case with you on duty, off duty. We can get into whatever type of thing you want to get into, but the one cardinal sin in our friendship is that deadbeat daddy stuff will get you exiled. I mean, we can get into any type of gangster stuff it is, but we not playing with no deadbeat daddies. That's a no-no.
I think that's something that's different though in our group. Like we hold each other accountable to how you not gonna be there for your kid.
Right.
Like I think it's just something that's inbred in the group itself, that there's no way I'm gonna hang out with you knowing that you can't take care of your responsibilities in that manner. I think that's just something that our group has done. I know that we may all personally talk about our experiences with our dads, but I know in my personal experience, I grew up without my father. Like never met him. We may have tried to engage with each other once, and that was it. It never really flourished into anything else. And that's like when I turned 18, we tried to connect and never worked out again. So I don't know about his group, but the group that I grew up with around you guys and everybody associated with our circle, you can't do that. So that's a whole different dynamic, something that we can talk about later on. But yeah, I think that's something that we do a little different.
You know, I think that is important too, because, you know, us particular on here, we all have different relationships with our fathers, right? I mean, you know, I was raised with two dads. You know, I had my biological father, Dewan Sr., and my stepfather, Charles Anderson, and both played a vital part in my life. But I think one of the things that was important in that relationship was, regardless of it was my father who, you know, was involved, who, you know, would be at my games and come to those, my track meets, my football games, you know, that supportive dad in that aspect, not necessarily so financially, but as far as being involved, being present. You know, I would go to his house every other weekend. And as I got older, whenever I wanted to, for the most part, when I can get there myself. And then you have my stepfather, who was present in the home, who was a big financial support, who took care of the day-to-day roles and responsibilities as fathers. I think, you know, that was pivotal in my upbringing. But what I always tell parents, you know, in my practice, I deal with a lot of these conversations about, you know, the absent father, the no good dad, where a lot of times you see fathers are involved, but you hear this narrative that they're not. So I always say, well, you know, his father not in, you know, I may have a client say, oh, his dad's not involved in his life. Okay, so man, when was the last time he seen his dad? Oh, probably 2 months ago. Okay, so are we talking about an absent father or an inconsistent father, right? Because those are two different things. An absent father, a kid who's raised without a father, they're going to have a different struggle than a kid who's raised with just a father who's inconsistent. Obviously, you want your father to be as consistent as possible, but having a relationship with your father is going to be better psychologically, mentally, and physically than not having a relationship with your father at all. And I think that's where sometimes the expectations of what a father is can get in the way.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Being a person that, of course, my dad, Jeffrey Gallo, is my father. I always have been and always been around. But I also have a stepfather too, Bruce Turner. So both of them played a critical role into my upbringing. When I moved to the Bay Area when I was 12, my dad took on the day-to-day responsibilities of being a father and relieved my mother. And then that same time frame, I met my mom and my stepdad got together. But he taught me some other stuff. He taught me about business acumen, negotiating my own wage. Like my first job was working at his father on the meat market, negotiating my first wage. He was like, how much you want to make? How much you want to make a day? $100. My dad taught me how to take care of a household, how to be a good husband, how to be a faithful husband, how to do those type of things. So you just kind of grab and pick different things that make you a better person. And it wasn't just those two. I had other influences, my uncles, you know, coaches and all that stuff that we learned from sports. And then, of course, you guys too, even though we're in the same peer group, we learn a lot from each other in regards to things like that. So that's kind of how the dynamic is for me.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say you guys all touched on experiences that embody like just kind of different things that I experienced with my dad in general. I mean, my parents were together most of my life. My dad is Morton Bradley. And the things that I experienced with my dad is that, like, my dad did the best he could, and he did great. Like, I mean, if you know me, like I was afforded a lot of luxuries in life. I'm not necessarily a kid that wanted for anything, but that didn't necessarily mean that not wanting for everything monetarily or financial didn't come with some of its own woes and bumps on in the road to, just being raised and, going through parenting and fatherhood with my dad. But I didn't really experience my dad going to like all of my games and stuff like that because my dad was a hustler. He worked a 9 to 5 for the city of San Francisco, and he had multiple businesses growing up and stuff like that. So by the end of the day, end of the week, my dad might not have went to all my games, but I had all the equipment that I needed for my games. You know what I'm saying? So just looking back on that, if it's something that I could have changed, I would have probably wanted more time with him. Like, I actually grew up with my father in my household my whole life, but we've never went to a sporting event together, like a basketball, a football game, or nothing like that. But we have, we've been on a boat. My dad had a boat growing up. I had nice cars when I was a kid and stuff like that. So monetarily, we had all of that stuff going on. He taught me how to do business because he had businesses. But just to touch on that experience and how it blends in even the parish's situation is that my dad had an absent father growing up. So when we would go through our different bumps on the roads and things like that, I think for him, it was like, I'm here for him because I'm here for him monetarily, da, 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 da. And he was. None of that stuff can be knocked. But I would see sometimes the other side of the coin when you can see like that passed on trauma and resentment of him not having his father in his life. Kind of reminds me of the movie and the story Fences. So, shout out to my dad for everything he did. I'm grateful for all of that. And I wouldn't take back the experience at all because it helped mold who I am. But definitely a lot of different things that I saw growing up in that circle just with my parent.
So then the question is, where does this narrative come from? Why do fathers get a bad rap? Like, where does it come from then? If we got examples of father figures being there, where does this come from? Because I think we have more enough examples to say they're around. They are consistently around in some fashion, some way, some form. So where do you guys think this really comes from?
P, I think it's expectations, right? I think each parent has different expectations of what they believe a father is. So I think that if you're a mother and you were raised in a 2-parent home, you have an expectation of what your father gave you, and you expect the man that you're with or the man that you have a child with to be that same father. And you guys may not have the same relationship. And I think that expectation is a lot of times where the narrative or the rap of a bad, father gets, right? According to the CDC, 79% of fathers live with at least one of their children, right? 79% live with at least one of their children. So then we don't know what's going on with the other 20%, but we know at least 79% of fathers are involved with at least one of their children. And granted, we see it, in some ways where a father can be all in with one child in the home that he lives with and totally not be involved with the other children, or not as involved as he may be. But I also think, again, those expectations play a key role. I've had to sit down and have numerous conversations within my family about just the different things and the benefits that I have just from my father. Yes, my mom and my father had me when they were 16 and 17 years old. They were very young. So my early experiences with my young dad who joined the military, came back from the military, kind of had a brief stint with drug addiction, went to jail for a while, got out of jail and got like 10 associate's degrees, totally changed his life. Never had any legal issues or drug related issues after that. I needed to see that, just as well as I learned the good things and qualities that I wanted to do. I learned the things that I didn't want to do from my father, from my stepfather. There were certain aspects of how I wanted to treat a woman that I said, based on my experiences with my father and my stepfather, I didn't want to do that. But there were other great qualities as far as investing in my education, being a provider for my home, that I got from my father and my stepfather. And I think sometimes mothers may be worried that those fathers are going to take on the negative qualities that they see instead of making room for them to have, the relationship with the kid that allows the kid to grow and have that man in their life.
Yeah, me and my daughter were talking earlier today because we were talking about the topics before we got ready to record today. And she brought up James Baldwin and an interview that he did, and how James Baldwin talked about the past trauma, of different experiences from just even oppression and slavery and things like that. I feel like sometimes in general with manhood, right? it's not necessarily the most nurturing environment. And a lot of that comes with like us preparing like our children and our offspring for just like situations that are going to lead to them having to endure, you know, like we're trying to teach them how to be ready and be strong for the world, right? So I feel like when you think about situations like that and you think about your children, the relationship with the mother is a more nurturing relationship some of the times, right? So if you have dynamics in which the child is already having those type of conflicts and things with the father, you know, sometimes it's hard to gravitate to your father, right? Like that tough love is something you don't always appreciate in the moment. You learn to appreciate it afterwards. Like, oh, I get the full circle of why he was teaching and preparing me for that, you know? But along the way, there's a lot of traumatic experiences that you can have within that time frame that may make your outlook on your dad kind of tough, you know? So I just, like I said, I refer back to the movie Fences. It just was a lot of trauma that was passed to from Denzel to his child. Gladly, his child didn't receive all of that, but his son definitely had to experience a lot of Denzel's past trauma through that relationship of having, you know, or that relationship with his father.
Go ahead, Dewan.
Oh, no, you good, go.
No, I was going to say, Tab brought up a good thing. It's a learning experience, and I think both of you guys said something kind of around it. Parenting is it's no set book. It's no book. Every child is different. Every household is different. Every man and every woman is different. And on top of that, every parent relationship is different, whether that person be in the home or out of the home, whether it's a co-parenting situation or married or whatever. So all of those things are different, and there's no guidelines to how to do it. Same thing like Dewan's talked about his parents. My mom was 14 when she got pregnant. My dad was 16. So these are children essentially trying to raise a child. They're still trying to learn how to navigate the world. So a lot of the stuff that I remember my mom's 18th birthday. Like stuff like that is crazy. Like no kid should be, you know, not to say it was a bad thing or a good thing, but I remember stuff like that. So I've seen them both grow up, being the oldest sibling of my siblings. But it's just something that you learn. It's like trial and error. And I think like when I see my little brothers, they had a totally different childhood than I had. The loving stuff was different. They got to do kind of stuff. They get to bend the rules a little bit differently. And I think as parents learn a little bit, it gets a little bit better over time. So I think like this generation, like our parents, and then like going down to you guys, it's just getting better because we're trying to build upon what was already done previously, if that makes sense.
When you know better, you do better, right?
Exactly.
Like those who know better do better. My bad earlier too. I said CDC. I mean, according to the census study, 79% of children live in those homes.
I was gonna say, for instance, even though I didn't grow up knowing my dad, I grew up looking at different father figures. So let me say that, like Al Fairley, he's my godfather, took me into his house and tried to set me straight as much as he could. Bless that man. But overall, you know, when I went away to college and I saw how some of my friends' dads came to our dorms or came to our apartment and really just sat down with us and had conversations with us, that's when I would pick up like, oh, okay, that's kind of where I want to go as a dad, or that's kind of what I want to do as a dad. So going back to what Jeff was just saying is that as we grow older, we pull from what worked, and we also pull for what didn't work. Like in my perception, not knowing my dad at all, I'm like, shoot, I done superseded, you know, what a father does because I'm in my son's lives in general. Like even if we don't always I don't make the best decision engaging with them, the fact that I spend that time, like you guys know who I am. And at the end of the day, you're going to be able to call me and be like, hey, Dad, this is what's going on in my life. How did you kind of deal with this situation? Goes back to what Jeff said. We're learning and we pull from the things that we've experienced over time. I don't think there's no one book that says, hey, this is how you be an ultimate father. Because the funny part is you can be that dad and then your child will go, that's not what I liked.
Right.
That's not that I enjoyed, which throws everything out the window. Like, yeah, you were there this way, but that's not what I wanted. I needed this in my life. So it's like you said, it's a trial and error. And I think that it takes a village because at the same time, I know all four of you guys, well, you three and numerous other people know my sons. And I think at any point I can be like, hey, I may not know what to do, but your uncle so-and-so, he knows. And so the next thing you know, I'm like, hey, you pulling from your resources to make things happen. So again, the father's getting a bad rap. I still don't see where that's actually written or where it comes from.
You know,
I just wanted to add too to what Parrish is saying is like, I think that's one of the most humbling things about the good part of fatherhood for us, right? It's like when he said it takes a village. I mean, yeah, I'm dad in my house. I'm their dad. I'm the dad in my house. But my kids have uncles/dads, dads/uncles. If I don't know the answer, it's not one of them things as a dad where I'm too proud to be like, you know, you only come to me when you need these things, or you don't bite the hand and feed you. Like our village as a whole, every village in this hand feeds you. You know what I'm saying? Like I know that like all of our kids, they have this complex about them where they don't necessarily really have to worry about nothing. They know between the village, they're always going to get their needs met. They're never going to go without. And I think that that's just not something that they also feel, but it's also something that we let them know. You know, like even in our relationships with our wives, like everybody's wife, I mean, if there's a serious issue going on with one of us, they not afraid to pick up the phone and call each other as wives or call us and be like, hey, tap in with your friend. I'm trying to figure out what's going on so that we can get on the same page. So when it comes to fatherhood and just how that all plays out, we've always had a village mentality to make sure that we were good dads. You know, I pull from y'all's dads. You know, I can hit you guys' dads up when I need things. That's just been the way that we've always done things. And I feel like it's been one of our roots to success is that we have that strong background and rooted deep in the ground that we can keep going back and we pull from that fountain whenever we need to.
It's crazy because you guys talked about an important aspect of it, which is the village, you know, and I always think about my uncles, my Uncle Doug, Douglas Longmire, and Uncle Dion Davis, who were pivotal in my upbringing as well. That village extended to when I was outside of the home. I could be out in the neighborhood and I see one of my uncles, they're going to pull up on me like, what you doing? Right? You know, where you going? Where you at? Who you with? You know, if I was with my uncle Doug's crazy. So if he see me with some people I ain't supposed to be hanging with, he gonna run up on him and like, hey, y'all need to get away from my nephew. You know what I'm saying? Like having those uncles or those men who take value in your son's life makes a huge difference. You know, when you look at the research on parenting and how to deal with children who grow up in adverse situations, it says every child who grows up in an adverse situation who may grow up without a father needs at least, or boys need at least 2 males in their lives, that take an investment in them, right? Mm-hmm. The fortunate thing is we have us. How many times have we jumped on a call or on the Marco Polo making fun of Jaden because of something he got going on, right? You know, Pia have us on the phone with him quick in a minute, like, hey, you know, let's take this to the fellas. Let's see what they think about it, right? So as he's transitioning in high school, trying to figure out how to be a man, he got a whole village of men who done been through all those experiences, right? That he can get feedback from. That's what we need, and that's why fathers get a bad rap, because sometimes some fathers are selfish, meaning that they're good fathers and they have good opportunities and resources, but they only keep it for their children instead of expanding it to the children within their village, their nephews, right? Their friends' kids. Their cousins. We have to make sure that we are taking care of us as Black men who are raising Black men in this world.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for my daughter, she's in her first year of college. Soon as she got ready to leave the house, the first thing we all established for her was a dads and uncles Marco Polo. So any given time of the night, anytime you have a situation, whether it's with a boy, whether it's with school, whether it's with life, you got your therapist, you got your social worker, you got your police officer, you got your college dean, and you got a whole bunch of other slew of people in there that can offer you advice on anything that comes up. And I mean, for me, I know as a dad, like, it's not always going to be comfortable coming to me for things that you want to talk about or need, because I'm your dad and you know how I think and I'm going to judge you. But sometimes your uncles, who pretty much play the same role as your dad, can give you the same advice that I would have wanted to give you, our advice from the best angle as possible, so that we can make sure that we keep you safe and we keep you grounded in this circle that you have.
Right, because LaPaula can easily jump on, and shout out to LaPaula who's out there at USC, you know, but she can easily jump on the chat and be like, hey, you know, dads, uncles, how do y'all feel about this? I'm dealing with this situation at school. What do y'all think? And not even that. Say, for instance, she don't want to talk to Taff about it because she's afraid that he's going to daddy it. He's going to daddy it. He's going to jump in his car and drive out to LA. And
that's the truth, though. I am good daddy, and when I daddy it, I don't cop it. I'm full gang members.
So I mean, so then to answer the question, why do fathers get a bad rap? It's because somebody put out the narrative about Black fathers, and their narrative is wrong, and people ran with it. And then the things that's personified in the news and in media is fathers not doing their job, and it's completely wrong. It's completely wrong.
Yeah.
There's a lot of men that takes the place for those that's not around. I want to make sure we emphasize that there's a lot of men that takes the place for those that are not around to help raise a child. And like you said, it's usually two men in some aspect that contributes to that young man or that young woman's life. And I think that's the narrative that needs to be changed.
Yeah, we have to change the narrative. There's a lot of information out there about Black fathers and their involvement. According to the Census Bureau, 70% of Black fathers are more likely to have helped their children take a bath or walk them to school or, showed up to their games instead of, where you have, 60% of white males and then 50% of Hispanics. So there are Black fathers who are involved. But I think that sometimes when you're kind of pro fatherhood, it sounds as if you're kind of anti-motherhood. And I don't necessarily think that, it's the case. I think you can be proud and want more involvement from fathers, but also recognize and appreciate everything that mothers have done. Right. I can't hold a baby in my stomach for 9 months. I can't.
They got to get here. They got to get here.
They got to get here. The kids have to get here. Right.
Right.
I can't do a lot of the things that mothers can do. I don't even have the capabilities of that. Some of that nurturing aspect, I don't have that. But I think mothers and fathers both have things that they add, and that value has to be it has to be allowed. It has to be a situation where both parents are willing to nurture the development of that kid, and I think that kind of segues into kind of our next topic, what roles the mothers play in fatherhood? What roles do you see mothers playing in fatherhood?
Ooh,
Ooh.
I ain't gonna get into that, man. I ain't got no kids, but I'll say about my mom. But I never see my mom get in the way of either me seeing or visiting my dad or me interacting with my dad's side of the family. So when I was living in Southern California, my dad was pursuing his education in Northern California, Sonoma. So if I need to go see my grandma, she wanted to see me, or my uncles wanted to see me, or just the other side of the family, I never remember a negative interaction in regards to that. Or there was never like, no, you can't come pick him up, or no, you can't see him. So in regards to myself, my mom, and my dad, she never stood in the way of that. But I could say, and my dad might get mad at me, but for my younger sister, he did all the stuff with the court. He gonna pay the money. He did all that. But I would say the court system didn't aid him in the visits, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. He sent the money, but in regards to him getting his weekly visits or his monthly visits or whatever, they didn't enforce that with the mom. So there's a lot of resentment my sister has towards my dad, even though my dad, he was trying, he doing the best he can do in regards to that. But there's still it was still like a brick wall, a barrier there that he couldn't break through with the mom. So I've seen it kind of on both planes with him. You have one mom that's like, go for it. And then one's like, I ain't dealing with you like that. You know, that type of deal. So it's hard because, like y'all talked about, it doesn't mean that the father did anything wrong. It doesn't mean that that the mother is doing something wrong necessarily, but in essence, she is, because she's preventing him from being a father. So it's tough.
I'm gonna jump in behind you on that one. And hopefully y'all don't mess up my spooning action for the night, because I'm gonna tell a little bit of my wife's story. So hopefully I do it the right way, and I don't, get stuck on no damn couch or nothing. But I have a blended family, and my wife, first child when she was like 20 years old in college, and her experiences during that time made her have to learn how to be a stronger person and endure through negative experiences she had with the first father. So in that situation, when we go on to have our second child, because all of my children are my children, bottom line, straight up. But I will say that my wife, because she had been a single parent at one point in time in her life, had to learn how to adjust to having that extra help. There was a lot of situations where she was in I'll do it myself mode, or she would make decisions and she, didn't necessarily think about, well, how do I include, my husband in this? But a lot of that just came from due to the fact that when you've been doing it so long by yourself and it's so hard, because shout out to single Black mothers, because that's a tough job. it is an adjustment when you get in a relationship. So I feel like my wife, we had to learn how to make room for each other, and me too, because I felt like, I had to push back at first, where it's like, well, wait a minute, I'm here, I'm dad in this whole house. We're going to do it this way. You have to learn how to do that dance with each other. It's a tango, it's definitely a dance that you have to know the steps and the sequence, and you got to work together in that. So once we learn how to make room for each other, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. So the role I would say is that the mom is everything, bro. They carry the children, like they're the nurturers. They're the ones that offer that.
The gatekeeper.
Yes, the gatekeeper. They're the gatekeeper to fatherhood. Actually, that's the role they play in it. And that's what I was trying to get to, is the fact that they are the gatekeepers of fatherhood. In order to have a beautiful relationship with your children as a father, you have to have a good relationship or a beautiful relationship with their mother. She has to allow you that space and opportunity, I'm not just trying to gain, the support of all the women watching our show, but that's the truth. Like, they do play a major role in how that works, or at least from my experience, my Braspective experience, that's kind of how it's been for me. So shout out to
the tricky part about it is, and Will Smith said it best, that mothers have to make room for fathers in their imperfections.
Yes.
Meaning that just because I'm not a perfect father doesn't mean I don't have an impact on that child's life, right? And I think that's what happens, is recognizing that, again, like Jeff said, there's no blueprint for this. There's no book out there that you can read that teaches you how to be a perfect parent. And if you're a father who grew up without a father, then really sometimes just your presence, you may feel that's enough. Because if you didn't have a father who was present, you didn't really learn how to do it. You didn't have the uncles, right? We have uncles. A lot of our uncles is locked up in jail. So a lot of us young Black men, we may be raised in communities full of women.
Yeah.
And who teaches you how to be a man? So when that man is trying, there has to be a sense of, hey, that's his child as well. He loves him. He's going to try his best to do right by that child. It may not be the way that the mother would want it to happen, or that the mother would do it, but recognize that both parents are different. And I think that is key. And sometimes recognizing that a person can be a bad partner, a bad husband, a bad boyfriend, a bad one-night stand, but end up being a really good father. Right? That's the tricky part about it, is we hold people sometimes, if you hurt me and I have this child, then I have a fear that you're going to hurt this child in the same way you hurt me. But recognizing that that's our child. So I think that there always has to be a space where mothers are saying, I'm going to try my best to allow this father to connect with his child as often as he wants to, despite him paying child support or not. My mom was infamous for, whenever I wanted to see my dad, whenever we went to go over to see my dad, she allowed it to happen. And she could have based on their relationship and anything that happened or went wrong in a relationship, she easily could have said, nah, I'm not going to allow you to have access to these children. But she always said, hey, you want to see your daddy want to see you. You can go over there. And I think that was perfect, because as I got older, I was able to see my father as much as I wanted to.
So yeah, that's where I was going to come in. So my situation is very unique. I had a son very young, and that situation didn't work out. Then I had a son in my mid ages, and that situation didn't work out. So I have two sons by two separate situations, and the engagement with their mothers is totally different. With my older son's mother, we had to grow up and learn how to compromise. So there was a lot of times that I was wanting to do what I wanted to do, and she was like, no, because that's not what I want to do. Like, our perceptions of my role, being that we weren't in a household, were too different. So we had to learn a lot of compromise. Whereas as I got older and had my second son, his mother and I were already a little bit more mature. So in the role of, hey, I want to see my son to do this, it was, of course you can, go ahead. It was like, hey, I see what your role is. So it comes down to a lot of compromise that took place in both situations. One was a little more easier to finesse than the other, but I think from what Dewan is saying is understanding how we both perceive that role. That, I think that gatekeeper piece was the first thing I had to learn to address. Was, I know that to engage with my sons, I really have to learn how to engage with his mom, no matter what the situation is, and understand how to compromise in those situations to get there. So mothers have, they sometimes want to protect and be fathers, and you're like, hey, I see where you want to go with that, but you gotta let it go, and you gotta let me intervene so that I can teach him how at least to deal with other men or deal with society as they perceive him as a man. And I think sometimes moms have to be shown that before they let it happen. So those are just some of the experiences I had in raising two boys, different women in their perception of what fathers' roles are in their households.
Let me ask
you, it was sticky at times.
Let me ask y'all this though, because I know even from my own personal experience, do you think that sometimes fathers that have children at young ages put themselves in bad situations due to their financial picture? Like, for instance, right? My daughter was just talking about it this weekend. She was like, man, we spent some money this weekend. I remember, shout out to you. I remember back in the day when you was broke. I've been in my professional career now for about 6 years. So it wasn't that long ago. She was used to me being like, no, you got to put that back. We can't get that from the store right now. So I'm just thinking about, like, one of the things she big up me on that really, was significant to that was the fact that even though I might not have always had a lot of money, I was always there for, recitals, track practice, plays, whatever you had going on, we showed up to those things, but I do know that, man, if I was a young father and I wasn't with her mom and I would have had all of these different things going on, with the embarrassment of not having the monetary funds to take care of my child kind of pushed me out of the situation and made me less of a father. I don't think that answer is yeah for me, but I can see how, some dads do feel that, well, man, I can't do, so I'm not going to show up. Like, it's a lot, manhood and masculinity, just to have those things stripped of you in whatever way possible, whether it be financial or an experience where you just can't be a protector or a provider. That might make somebody step back a little bit, not giving men an excuse, but just looking at all the different ways in which the picture might play out.
Yeah, but I think that's a pressure that the dude puts on himself.
Definitely.
Yeah, there's a lot of times. I mean, with my youngest, before I, finally got to the position that I want. I mean, sorry, my oldest, before I got to the position that I wanted, it wasn't that we have to go without. It's just we have to go with the off brand. So I'm sorry you couldn't get the Nike right now, but we're gonna get you the Pro Kids. Like, we probably not gonna get you the Adidas, but we'll get you the Diadors or something like that.
I'll go to the store now.
Bro, you tripping?
Them XJ900s from Payless. Them XJ900s.
Right.
What happened when y'all be going to the store now, though?
Hey, that's different. But in general, you can't put that pressure on you, because at the end of the day, and I think we've been saying this from the beginning, is there's no book to it. So I'm just trying to be the best father I can be with the situation that I'm in. And I think all men need to hear that. No matter what your situation may be, you may have whatever job you have, but the fact that you're trying to provide is more than enough. I think the kid's going to look back and go, hey, we didn't have it all, but shoot, I don't remember going completely without, Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think providing in your presence. I mean, again, we talk about fathers and their ability, what they're providing is consistency. They're providing a relationship. They're providing a perspective on life, as a father's, like you said, mothers protect, fathers prepare.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to expose my son as much as possible. If my son falls out of the tree, his mom's going to run, pick him up. Baby, you okay? If I'm looking at him like, son, you all right? You good? All right. Now climb back up the tree. Right. Because I think that there's certain aspects that, I'm raising a young Black man in America, and I have to transition him to be able to have emotional resiliency. So I can't run and coddle him every time he hurts himself. Hey, are you injured?
Or are you hurt?
Or are you hurt? And I'll talk with him. I may give him a hug, but from there, let's go back out there and try it again. Because the world you're going to deal with, there has to be a sense of, I'm preparing you for that. And I think that's where struggle. You guys know I had my first kid at 19. My first child, I was 19 years old. I was a kid in myself. And, you guys know she's no longer here with us right now. But I think just looking at, from having a son at 19, my daughter at 19 to then my son at 30, just the two different experiences and being a parent and recognizing like, oh, okay, as you get older, again, as you know better, you do better, right? So if you know a little more, you kind of have a different aspect. And I was that type of father that I was young and I didn't always know what to do or how to do it right at 19. I felt like if I didn't have money or I couldn't buy my daughter diapers, or I couldn't buy her food, then I would avoid picking her up from her mom because I'm like, I have no way of providing for her.
Yeah,
Right? Instead of me just asking a mom and humbling myself and say, hey, I want to spend time with her. I don't necessarily know that I have the money to, to buy her the food and all that, but hey, give me a couple diapers and some formula and we'll be on our way, right? Letting that pride down, letting that guard down and be able to transition into that. So that's important. And I think that a lot of times in life, we have to make sure that we're having those conversations with parents in general and making sure they understand how to do this. And the best way to figure out how to do that, I always tell parents, look, we need to start investing in going to parenting classes, right? Learn how to co-parent. And co-parenting is not something, although the technical term is for co-parenting is when people are divorced. I think co-parenting is just learning how to get on the same page in general. If we talk about everything, whether we talk about our kids' religion, what school they're going to, what they're doing for the summer, how we're spending the holidays, if we get on the same page as parents, then we have an opportunity to properly mold our children. How do you guys feel about co-parenting classes?
Well, I wanted to talk to just about kind of what you were saying with the co-parenting classes, right? And this is one of my feelings on it. People also need to decide that they're in a co-parenting relationship, right? You got a lot of people that literally share custody 50-50, share monetary expenses 50-50, but they'll say, I'm a single mom or I'm a single dad because they aren't in line with having the same set of rules in that household. If you guys are both putting that same amount of effort into that situation, you are co-parenting, whether you like co-parenting or not, So I think in those situations in general, co-parenting classes are great. I mean, and like you said, even with your experience with your daughter when you were 19, you would feel like, oh man, I can't do this because I don't necessarily have all the stuff going on. Well, that happens even in a household when it's you and your wife and your kids, because back when you didn't have as much money as you did, how many times did you spend extra money because you're like, I'm the man of the household, I got to make sure everybody gets what they need today, instead of being like, hey, we need to rebudget this, So we do those things a lot, but co-parenting classes, I think they're an excellent idea. It's a lot that can be learned. It's just about how do you structure it, It's a lot of different households out here. What would be the structure of something like that?
Yeah, I think, y'all know my background working with the Department of Family Protective Services for years. This whole thing about like the child support thing, right? So we got friends that aren't with their spouses or wives or girlfriends. Put yourself on papers, right? So that way you get your 50-50, right? So I think the part of that, like the court needs to implement that co-parenting class, right? He paying his child support, he getting it for his week, but y'all both need to learn how to interact with each other. It can't be, I'm gonna just meet you at the McDonald's and it's this crazy thing that happens at the McDonald's, right? It can be this, I don't ever have to see you, you pick your kid up from school. We gotta interact in some type of way, because I want to be at the birthday party. We don't need to have 2 birthday parties. Or I don't want to be at the, I don't want to be at the play and I got to sit across from there and see that he looking over there to see if I'm there, or looking over there to see what you're doing. All those things matter, and it has to be like a united front.
We talk about like.
Go ahead.
All that does matter. Like I was saying in the beginning, it was a compromise that my son's mother and I had to learn. There was a time period when Jaden had basketball games, we'll show up and be on opposite sides of bleachers. And then when the game was over, and say Jaden had a phenomenal game, game's over, he's looking for praises from his parents, and he got to go to one side, hey man, you did great, and then you got to go to the other side, oh baby, you did good, and then you leave with one parent and celebrate in a certain way. And it took a while to learn, like, no, we can be in the same environment and both praise our son as he should feel that praise. And then we all walk out together, and then we all, get into our cars and go our separate ways. But I'm going to bring it back to the Braspective perspective, is that, that's something that's not just taught in our culture. Like a lot of times we're like, oh, you're not with him, put him on papers and that's it. Give him to the calculator, call it a day. And they put him on the calculator and you pay your child support and you keep it moving. And that's just what people say though. They're like, hey, as long as you're on the calculator and you're paying your money, yeah, you good. So it got to be something that has to be a cultural shift to say, nah, even though y'all didn't work it out, y'all can still be good parents at the same time. And it's a learned behavior. It's something that has to be ingrained. Sorry to cut you off, Dewan, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was going to speak on like kind of what Jeff mentioned about like child support and how that process in itself, becomes an issue, and how he said, go out there and put yourself on papers. And any lawyer that you would talk to, well, most lawyers would recommend, like, yeah, just go out there and put yourself on child support, right? They're going to look at your income. They're going to say, okay, we're going to start with one child, so about 20% of your income. In some states, they're going to look at both parents to figure it out, because if the custodial parent, the parent who actually has custody of the child, or the child lives with, makes more than the parent who has rights in custody, then they're going to look at the number and figure out a number that best works. But when you put yourself on papers, you're basically saying, okay, I'm going to put my kid on child support. I'm going to pay myself, or pay her child support. I'm going to make sure that I have my kid on my insurance and things of that nature. The things that you can do to make sure that you're protecting yourself. I think a lot of times, your lack of knowledge, or not going to co-parenting classes or anything like that, keeps us from having this basic information. Sometimes fathers feel like, oh, well, she won't let me see my kids, I have no rights. No, that's when you put yourselves on paper, right? You put yourself on paper. Most states start at 50-50, and they work their way from there, right? They work their way from there. Your wife can say, or your ex can say, hey, you sell drugs and all that. If she ain't got no proof you're doing it, 50-50, right? It's 50-50. Now, obviously, more serious things like domestic violence and all that, with proof, they look at that stuff. But a lot of times they're trying to figure out who can provide for the kid. They look at who's been giving the kid a bath, who's been washing their clothes, who's been taking them to school. They look at those things to figure out who the kid should even live with. So I think that process needs to be understood. And a lot of times you learn some of that stuff in co-parenting.
See, but the thing that we were saying right here is, between the putting yourself on papers and all that, that's all monetary. That's still not teaching you how to raise a kid.
Yep.
It's still not teaching you how to engage with your kids at the same time. What are you teaching your child when the mom or the dad can say, oh yeah, your parent pays their child support, but we can't raise you at the same time? Like that part is great to be on papers and everybody pay their monetary piece, but at the same time, how are we gonna raise this kid? And it comes down to how you gonna do for instance, kids on punishment at one house, but then he goes to the other house and now he running fancy free, but he did something that needs to be disciplined in both houses. But since you're on, I pay my child support, so I do what I want over here and you do what you want over here, that doesn't help the family dynamic. Now, of course, you can agree to disagree on some stuff, but at least you talk it out.
But P, that's it though. That's what co-parenting is. And I think some people don't see that. The goal of co-parenting, when it's all said and done, is for one household to look like the other. So if your curfew is at 8 o'clock over here, it's at 8 o'clock over there. If you're on punishment, when you're at mama house, when you come to daddy house, you're still on punishment, right? That's what co-parenting is how do we get consistent in our parenting? How do we do this together?
It's some bad negative consistencies too, though, because I'll just speak from a law enforcement standpoint. Most law enforcement agencies have a safe exchange zone at the police department. It's right in front of the police department, where the mother and the father come there to exchange their child, custody of their child. This situation isn't normally met with a police officer standing right there while y'all do your trade of the child or exchange of the child. It's actually just a place where they go. And so just thinking about what you guys are saying when it comes to building good habits and co-parenting, I understand that being in place for like domestic violence situations, like that's what we're here for. Obviously, we want to intervene in any situation like that to the highest level. That's no joke on any given day of the week. But there are some people out there that exchange children in those zones, those safe exchange zones, that don't have any type of history of that stuff. So just going back to what you guys are saying, it's like, if I'm out here trying to create a good environment with this child and raise him the right way, and I'm just going to call it what it is. We know what time we live in America right now. You're going to come to the police department to exchange your child, which kind of puts that notion out there that your father or mother is so untrustworthy that we have to exchange custody of you in front of the police department to keep us on track. You can go as far to think all of that. You can go as far to think about how you can get on track to make it a better situation for your child, And I mean, I'll just kind of end it too with this. When it comes to co-parenting, I've seen two amazing examples of it. My wife's dad, mom, and stepfather blend that up like amazingly. They do it better than anybody has ever done it before, right? And then I've watched Jeff's parents. They do that amazingly too. Like whether it's Bruce and his mom, whether it's Jeff's dad and his mom, they just do this in an amazing way. So when you watch examples of stuff like that, God forbid anything ever happened to any of us in those relationships, but I will pull from the strength and experiences that I've got to watch in front of me. Because when they do it, I mean, it can be done and it can be done well. I mean, look at him, look at us. Like, things like that have happened in front of us, and we've had good experiences and found ways that we can use that to co-parent in the future if we ever find ourselves in that situation.
You know what I was just thinking too, as we're talking about this, and Dewan, you probably can speak to it too. If you have marriage counseling and you have couples counseling before you get married, so you can't have like a co-parenting before you have kids kind of counseling to see what kind of way you guys see or best feel that you should raise your child. Then that way, when something does happen, if it does happen, you're like, oh, we had these discussions. We've been here before. So yeah, I think just going back to what the topic is at hand, why wouldn't you have a co-parenting type of either atmosphere or create that co-parenting atmosphere through counseling or through a class or through some type of learning environment to foster that kind of relationship? I think that's a great idea, actually. Now that I'm bringing everybody's perspectives together, I think that probably should be where people should go before they have kids. Let's have some co-parenting kind of conversations before we go there.
I've always stated that I believe that, you know, if you're going to get any type of state assistance, you should have parenting classes, right? And if you are going to have some type of custody agreement or you're going to get divorced, it should be mandated that you have co-parenting. And some places do it. Some, you know, of course, before they even allow you to come into the court, they want you to have co-parenting, and some don't. But, you know, co-parenting allows you to create rules of engagement. Essentially, like, you know, some of the things that people cover in co-parenting is, okay, what's our kids' religion going to be? Right? You know, what's our kids' religion going to be? Something simple like that. Like, are we going to send our kid to a public school or private school? What areas do we want to live in? You know, what area am I going to buy a house? What area are you going to buy a house? Because these are the community or the environment in which our kids are going to be exposed to. What camps do they go to over the summer? Right? All these things. And I think that figuring out how to sit down and talk about how to navigate those spaces is important. But people have to get past how they feel about the other parent.
Yeah,
right?
It's emotion-based a lot.
Right. It's emotion-based. But if our common ground is this sense of love for this child, right? If all else fails, we don't get along in any other aspect of our life. But if we have this common ground for the love of the child, why can't we use that to ignite the proper conversations? Because you have co-parenting, which we've all discussed, and then you have parallel parenting. Those are the parents who pull up in front of the courts. Those are the parents who can't have any communication with each other, who don't get along, but both want to equally have access in a relationship with the kid because maybe past domestic violence or things of that nature.
Yeah. But then in doing that, though, are they being a little selfish too? You know what I'm saying? Is there a pride thing in there that's like, no, I got to do it this way?
Right. But what Dewan's talking about and all that, what we all are saying, all that resentment, hate, whatever, has to be superseded by the love for your kid. Whatever you feel about this person, that situation, whatever. If you really truly love your son or your daughter, that relationship with that other person, parent, needs to supersede everything. Yeah. So, you know, you got to kind of self-reflect. You got to look in the mirror.
But see, that's where, I mean, the answers that we saying, they're real nice. They're real nice. But
it don't have to be that hard. Like, people are making it that hard. It doesn't.
I agree with that. But the emotion that is wrapped in that for most people is really, really, really real, and it normally supersedes that, right? Like, obviously we know it shouldn't, but it really does, you know. And I think that in some situations you do have people that were in a relationship at one point in time that grow to hate each other so much that if the child is the most prized possession of their love and life, that they wouldn't want to trust that other person with that. So out of protection, it starts to get ugly. Now,
trust or hurt that other person.
Yeah,
man. Tell talking about hurt, bro.
Most of the time it is hurt. But what I'm saying is that when you start getting to a point like that, they're like, man, I'm so hurt by this person. I wouldn't want them to watch my dog for a day. I'm damn sure not about to let them watch my kid, you know. And then now you get into a situation where it's a protection thing, but it's not, you're not really realizing it, but we both have a mutual interest in this.
Yeah, but how many times you see somebody use their kid as a pawn, Tab? And that's the problem. People are using their kids as pawns. Well, F you, nigga. You ain't saying your kid.
Yeah.
That's a bargaining chip. The kid is the bargaining chip.
Yeah.
My bro. I'm keep paying it, but you ain't seeing this baby. It's like a pawn. People do that all the time.
I think that definitely does happen. I mean, thank God I ain't had that experience. I'm gonna pass the ball to somebody else that might be more capable of dribbling right now.
I would agree, though. I think that, Tab is right, that sometimes, again, that emotional or traumatic experience that we may have had with that person, even if the traumatic experience is they cheated, they never probably put their hands on you, cut you out, but they cheated on you. And now as a result, you ultimately hurt people, right?
Hurt people,
so
yeah.
If you hurt me and I know the only thing you truly care about is your kid, I'm going to hurt you by limiting your access to your kid. Because you hurt me. So since you hurt me, why can't I think, or why don't I think you'll hurt the kid? But I also think, and I think there's some aspects in where they may have valid reasons for that, right? But I think sometimes people take that and they take it broad. Because I wanted you to pick him up at 3:00. You told me you couldn't pick him up at 3:00. You can pick him up at 5:00. Now you can't see him.
Now you can't see him.
Because I wanted you to buy him. Because I wanted you to buy him the Supreme backpack, but you showed up with the JanSport backpack. Now you can't.
Now you can't take him to school.
And I think that's where it happens in both parties, male and female, mother and father, can get petty in using their kid as a way to attack the co-parent instead of figuring out how to make it work together.
Parents have definitely and parenting and co-parenting definitely has been weaponized. I'm gonna agree with y'all and throw it to a whole different angle. I've seen it where it's because you won't talk to me and interact with me, then I'm not going to show up for this kid. Yes. If you're not being nice to me, smiling, batting eyes, being cordial, just sending a good text or something like that to make me feel like there's some type of connection still there, I'm not going to show up.
Because you got a new boo.
Yeah, because I do that. Huh?
Boy, you ain't giving the buns up no more. I ain't going to get that baby.
So you got people that's like, you're not letting me smash. You're not letting me see this kid. I mean, you don't want to talk to me. I'm not going to interact with this kid because I know if I do that long enough, you'll finally give me the phone call I've been waiting for. Even if you're only going to call to cuss me out, I'm going to get gratification out of that because you communicated with me. There's some sick shit to be going on out here.
But see, that's not that. So that's away from co-parenting. Now that's because you need some personal interaction with yourself. Like that's not even co-parenting. You just being petty on your own level. And I think that's
all a part of co-parenting, though. Really, though, like
that's not co-parenting.
It's not a part of co-parenting.
The outcome is different from somebody because co-parenting is not about you need to do this to see you need to do this to me to see the kid. Like that's a little different in my eyes. I think that's more of I need or that person needs some type of personal therapy. Call DeJuan, call Jeff to figure out what you're doing in order to get to a co-parenting situation.
I agree with you, but I believe that if we were just talking about co-parenting, like we talked about all the good things, the positive things, where we should be headed, what it really looks like. That's cool and all, but let's talk about how some of these people really be out here operating, right? Like in order to call it out sometimes is to put the mirror in front of somebody's face so they say, ooh, that outfit does look ugly. I don't want to wear that no more. And it's some people that wear that. The whole my way to co-parent is that when they don't communicate with me, I don't communicate with the child. Then when they start to communicate with me again, I communicate with the child. Sick shit, but really real. Like it really happens. So I agree with you. Should it happen? No. You need to go call DeJuan and Jeff, man. They got some stuff for you right now. They can work out whatever is in your messed up head. But the truth of the matter is that people really do things like that. It's hard but fair and sad but true.
It's the expectation.
Let me ask one more though, just to see where you guys go with this. Is these ideas of co-parenting and just therapy sessions? I'm glad that Jeff and DeJuan are here because I know me personally, I wasn't big on trying to see a therapist because I didn't see too many therapists that looked like me. So I didn't want to talk to somebody that wasn't African American male. Like, what do you know about my life? So I'm using that as an example as co-parenting, all those kind of engagements. Is that something that's in the Black community though? And is that something that the Black community will accept?
No, because nobody want to be told how to raise and deal with their kids and their family. Like there's that stigma we got to break down as Black people. Whether you go into a therapist for yourself, whether you go into a therapist for co-parenting, marriage relationship, I ain't about to have nobody sit here and tell me how to do this. Ain't nothing wrong with me. It's you, So we got to get past that point where it's like, oh, we're not willing to take on those things and admit that we could use some extra assistance to solve the problem.
I think ignorance loves company in the sense that sometimes our willingness to say that this is my child, I know what's best for my child, I'm not going to rely on somebody who's giving me empirically supported information that's been tested around the world on ways to be a better parent, right? Obviously, again, we don't know what it is to be the perfect parent, but to be a better parent. And I think a lot of people rely on that ignorance, right? Or we look for confirmation bias. If somebody say, oh, nah, you shouldn't allow that parent to go spend time with that kid, oh, and they support your agreement, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, that confirmation. They confirm things that you want to believe about yourself in a situation. I think that's what happens a lot in our community. Or we take everything to the church. That's a whole nother topic. Our pastors have to be, they know everything, right? The pastors, they the mental health expert, the physical health expert, the parenting expert, you know what I'm saying? The sex expert, they everything. And we go to these people who may or may not do a good job in parenting their own kids because their kid had a baby out of wedlock. Now they're not talking to their kid, but we're not gonna bring that into it.
That's Pastor James.
We go to those people for advice instead of going to the people who study this stuff, who, you know, speak on this stuff and work with hundreds of people. I've worked with hundreds of clients on co-parenting, right? You know, and the fact is, one of the problems was that a lot of people were afraid to feel as if they didn't know how to parent. So they're not going to always ask questions. We need to get past that instead of saying, hey, I don't know everything. So, hey, why don't you help me learn more?
Yeah, it's that thing of, and I think that as we talking about generations of time going on, I think just in regards to just mental health or sense or seeking help, whatever it's for. You know, the old stigma, like our grandparents, like, I ain't go to no doctor. He don't know nothing. He a doctor. You know, he knows exactly what's going on. You got hypertension. You need this medication for hypertension to stay healthy. Like, I think now the generations are seeing, like, go get the help if you need it. And I think that's kind of where we get to now is people are actually going to get the help because it's there. There are Black therapists there that are men and women. You just got to go to Psychology Today. You look one up, you'll find one in your area, probably 40 of them. You didn't know it. But it's the thing of having to look for it or wanting to get the help.
Yeah. They wanted to be at the doorstep, but being able to just go out and search it and find it. And also recognizing that $15,000 that each parent spent on litigation going to court, that's $30,000 that could have went to the kids' college fund. Had they just sat down, got some co-parenting, you know, somebody wouldn't put themselves on papers and just kind of got along from there. But no, they want to get the courts involved in litigation and having to go to the judge. Well, let me go ask the judge if I should give the kid to you over Christmas break instead of Thanksgiving break, because in the previous year we agreed to this break. Like, I think there has to be compromises that have to be made, that things are going to happen. Just because the parent is late picking up the kid from school doesn't mean the parent shouldn't have access to the kid anymore.
Yeah, and the reason why I brought that up is because you always hear somebody say, you ain't gonna tell me how to raise my child. You can't tell me how to raise my child. You don't know how to, you know, you ain't in my household. So I think I just wanted to get that out there, that going to somebody for assistance is not bad at all. Use your resources. Resources don't have feet, but we do. So use them joints. Use them.
And I think that's a great way to wrap up the discussion, is use your resources. You know, regardless if you have issues. We spoke earlier about our issues with, you know, parenting and being fathers growing up, whether you have some type of attachment issue, that I think as men sometimes in our community, we feel that anytime you're saying, I desire to have a relationship with my father, then it's soft because I'm saying that I want to have a relationship with another man. You know, that whole homophobic aspect of upbringing that some people have, they need to get past that, because regardless if you're 10 or you 40, you're going to always desire to have a relationship with that person that a lot of people are going to tell you you look like, or there's going to be aspects of you that you don't seem to kind of blend in with your family that you're normally seeing. And you wonder, did I get these traits from my daddy or my daddy's side of the family? So having that connection to your both sides of your family is important. You know, your aunts and uncles on both sides, because again, you know, the bigger the village, the better for the children. So, you know, I like to thank you, brothers, for, again, we jumping on today, having another discussion. You know, I think this was a really good conversation for us to just openly talk about, you know, fatherhood, parenting, the importance of the gateway of motherhood and all that, and being able to forgive each other, right? So, hey, forgive. It all starts with forgiveness. If you can forgive that parent or that person for how they may have hurt you in a relationship, then that's the gateway to a successful co-parenting. First, forgive yourself, then forgive them, Forgiveness, again, forgiveness is not a feeling. It's a behavior. It's an action. It's the thing that you do, right? Something you got to engage in. It's not just a feeling over you. It's a process. And once you get to that process, you can start to open a door. So then you guys can have those joint birthday parties together. Man, I have some people, man, that I've had conversations with that they've been divorced 20 years and they still come together and have Christmas. Although the kids are not now grown and off to college, those co-parents can still come together with their new spouses and celebrate Christmas together. You know, that's ideal community. That's a business, and that's how you do it.
Hey, Sean,
that's a discussion right there. I don't know.
No, I can speak to that. My dad and my stepdad Bruce and my mom ain't together, but he's still my stepdad. I can go pull up on him at any time. I can call him. I can do all that kind of stuff. I can go over there for Thanksgiving.
Not if you need to get your chain back, but that's
shout out to the big homie. Shout out to the big homie Bruce.
Hey, but I just want to say too, you know, shout out to all the mothers, the fathers, single mothers, single dads, co-parenting dads, co-parenting moms. We wasn't out here in no way or shape or form with the intention to bash anybody. It was literally just our perspective on the things here. So we definitely don't want anybody to leave with that notion. This was just an honest conversation from the way we see things. So shout out to everybody doing what they're doing, getting up every morning, raising their kids, man. I'm sure they appreciate you for what you do. We all can do a little bit better though, and we just here to talk about different ideas.
Yeah, like the page, follow us on Instagram at Braspective. You know, subscribe to our YouTube page at Braspective. You know, our Facebook page at Braspective. Everything Braspective, right? You know, like, share, follow. You know, we appreciate it. If you got questions or things that you want us to see, talk about in the future, you know, put it in the comments, send it in our inbox, and we'll try to add it to the list. You know, everybody enjoy the rest of their Sundays. You guys enjoy spending time with your family, and we look forward to the next conversation.
Yes, sir.
We out.